Good afternoon and a very warm welcome to this plenary TAISIG event. My name is Mirjam Siesling. I am Program Manager for Tilburg University at MindLabs, and this particular event is a co-production of Tilburg University and MindLabs. It is my pleasure to be your host this afternoon, together with my colleague Julia Vaitonite. Julia is a PhD student in the Department of Cognitive Science and Artificial Intelligence in our School of Humanities and Digital Sciences, and Julia will introduce herself as well. Julia, could you kindly say who you are?
So, good afternoon. Firstly, I'm super excited to be co-hosting this event. And as was mentioned, I am a PhD student here and also one of the co-initiators of AI Forward Forum. And the forum aims to be a platform for different people to come together to discuss artificial intelligence. And we truly mean all the people across the board, so the humanities, science, and arts. And over the course of these discussions, we also aim to discern and develop a set of ideas that could be beneficial for developing general purpose AI systems. So if you wanted to learn more about the specific goals of this initiative, you can go to aiforwardforum.com. And as a matter of fact, this Thursday, we have one of our online events, which you can join. And now, back to you.
Thank you, Julia. Indeed, duly noted, the AI Forward Forum works together closely also with TAISIG and with MindLabs. So it's all coming from the same source, from the same AI community here in Tilburg. Now, I'll gladly take some time to introduce the technical and support team that is helping us making this event a success. We have Professor Emile Aarts, Cora de Jonge, Maarten van Alem, Priscilla Wagensveld, and Puk Aarts. On the next slide, you'll see the program for this afternoon. We roughly have 3 consecutive components. First, there will be the discussing and then handing over of the TAISIG Position Paper. After that, Professor Prins will deliver a keynote speech on the research report published by the Scientific Council on Government Policy and relate its contents to Tilburg University. We will conclude with a presentation by Dr. Henry Brighton and Dr. Emile from the Department of Cognitive Science and Artificial Intelligence on their proposal for a school encompassing elective minor on artificial intelligence. So that will be a part of the program that is dedicated to teaching and education. Over to you, Julia.
Another important component is of course, the interaction with the audience. And for that, there will be some time at the very end of the event, some 10 minutes. So if you are physically here, just please raise your hand and you can pose your question. And then we will try to raise that towards that question to the audience online. If you are online, you can type in your question into the chat. If it's a question or a remark, please do that. And again, we will try to address that.
Now, without further ado, over to the first part of the program, the TAISIG Position Paper. Emile, may I ask you to introduce the paper and fill us in on the rich history of AI research and teaching at Tilburg University.
Thank you very much, Mirjam. I'm glad to do that as a teaser to this afternoon's event. We have been working on this position paper quite some time. And there will be 3 persons presenting it to us, and they are projected. And my role is very simple. I will allude a little bit on the let's say the classics, the history, and it's also part of my age, because I consider myself as a person who has been part of this endeavor for quite some time. So let us look at the slide that I prepared for this. Thank you very much. And so, as we all know, we are using this notion, artificial intelligence, as if it was there as of the beginning of let's say, the name giving to mankind. That is not the case. It's only there for 70 years approximately. So it was coined at a very special meeting in Dartmouth. And what was special about this meeting is twofold. Well, the one part I already mentioned, that is the part that at that event, the notion artificial intelligence was actually used for the first time in history in the context of science. But then there was a second thing, and it's great to mention that, because we don't do that anymore. It was an event where some 20 persons only assembled, and each of them is, let's say, a name that contributed largely to the field. So without exception, all these 20 were persons that contributed in a dominant way to this development. And they sat together in this conference for 8 weeks. So at that point in time, discussing things took time, and not because they needed the time, but simply because they wanted to have the time, because it was such an important development. So that's great to recall. Maybe at some point in time, we should give ourselves also, let's say, the ease to look at these difficult things in more detail. So, but it was not the moment in time where there was this disruption between nothing and something. Mankind has been dwelling on this concept of artificial intelligence for several centuries. And I made a slide that starts with the start of this university, because that is our universe of today. So, but prior to 1956, a lot of things happened. So I gave a few examples, and I would like to recall much of the mathematical work that is referred to as theory proving. So that was artificial intelligence without using a computer. They did it on paper. And that was great, because there was this conception that there would be a closed reference framework expressed by some rules of mathematics. And from there, you could then prove anything that could be proven within a closed system. And then later, it was proven by Gödel that that was not possible, just because it is not possible. And that is one of the biggest theorems in artificial intelligence. But also the notion of robots is very old already. The word robot dates from a play from Čapek in 1930. It is even at the edge of this history. And then, of course, there is the Turing test. We still apply that to the large, and I see some students sitting in the audience. That's great. So we have been discussing that to the full extent from all angles, and the call is still open. So the call is still open whether or not this test really can make a discrimination between what we call natural intelligence, as in human intelligence, and artificial intelligence, as in machine intelligence. Well, and then for the past 70 years, a lot of things happen. And I'm sure that you know all these developments. I'm also sure that you have your favorite ones. So nurture them. And that is a binding element for all of us, because this is not just another technology that is driving society, as we will be learning from Corien Prins later. This is a system disruption, as we call it, and that is an important part. So what then is the final contribution from my side, Miriam? That is the question, how did Tilburg University fit into this endeavor? And what is really nice is that the Tilburg University history in artificial intelligence is old. It dates back to 1937, when the psychologist Jan de Kwaai, whom in the Netherlands we know because he later became a statesman, but at Tilburg University, the roots of artificial intelligence lie in the discipline psychology. And he was one of the first to come up with something that we now would call social signal processing. It was in the field of psychotechnics. It was taught at that point in time. And it even gave rise to a full-fledged laboratory that was taken over by KPN at that point in time, and to really look at these type of elements that are important to find out from people how they feel, how they react, how they behave on the basis of artificial signals. That was what was called at that point in time. And then also later, there was Professor Harry Bunt. He was a mathematician. He was a full professor at this university. And he started, let's say, the entire field of what we would nowadays call information processing, or human natural speech language, and the processing that goes with that. And that still is a very strong field within this university. There is also something in between that is on the part of chess playing. And maybe Tom Wilthagen could later on reveal some secrets about that. So I will keep that then for later. So bear with us, ladies and gentlemen. And then we get to the final part of the history. And that is really very rich. So there are great endeavors in the domain of what we call mathematical programming. Operations research is the term for that. I recall that in 1994, Corien, I guess you did it, started TILT. And so TILT is more than 25 years old, and TILT stands for Tilburg Institute on Law and Technology, which is still up and running and going strong. And then, well, we have some elements in creative computing, data science with JET, and virtual reality with MindLabs. So there are very many proof points, and we are doing fine.
Definitely.
And that's it.
Thank you, Emile.
You're welcome.
See you later.
Yes.
Marie.
Good afternoon, everyone. A unifying factor in the projects conducted by Tilburg University AI researchers is their focus on projects that are fair and human-centric. In line with the long tradition of AI as a discipline, as Emile mentioned, it goes back 70 years to the 50s of the 20th century. We work in multidisciplinary teams, where we combine expertise from computer science with what we currently know about human intelligence and its various aspects. Now, using the definitions of the Dutch AI manifesto, we can broadly speak about 6 themes that we as research community represent at Tilburg University. All of these make use of emerging technologies and media, such as machine learning and deep learning, virtual and augmented reality, and robotics. Let me introduce these themes to you, one by one. The first one, already mentioned by the previous speaker, is the theme of natural language processing. We have a long research tradition in this subdomain, and we are also known as a university nationally and internationally with respect to this theme. It concerns the creation and study of computational models of human language, both in written and spoken form, and in the last years in combination with information coming from other modalities, particularly the visual modality. And we have a very nice applied example of where this knowledge comes together. And that is our involvement in a Horizon 2020 project, Sign-On, where this knowledge is used to facilitate exchange of information between speakers that are hearing and speakers from hard of hearing community, focusing on sign languages across Europe. The second theme, the theme of machine learning, is nowadays mainly concerned with customization, application, and automatic interpretation, with stress on interpretation of deep learning networks. An important application for Tilburg University researchers is in the biomedical domain, where we analyze video and image data, for instance, to detect tiny bone fractures that are undetectable to human eye, or to predict cancer diagnosis from very small cell changes. The third theme of autonomous agents and robotics concerns the study of human and artificial minds and their interaction for the purpose of developing artificial agents and social robots that we can interact with. At Tilburg University, we create very rich models where we provide additional information collected, for instance, from sensors or brain imaging data. And these are used in projects that can support lifelong learning or in general, the development of educational technologies. The fourth topic of planning, search, and decision-making examines and models successful and sometimes unsuccessful examples of human reasoning in a world that, as we know, exhibits a very high degree of uncertainty. For example, we use information collected from wearables to create models of human social spatial networks. And thereby we can say something about how information spreads and how collective decision-making comes about. The fifth topic of computer vision builds on knowledge that we have collected about the very, very complex perceptual system that we as humans used to extract visual information from our environment. And these algorithms can be used for very interesting applications. For example, to detect malnutrition from body shapes, which is research that is being conducted in the context of the Zero Hunger Line. The final theme, the theme of data engineering and analytics, involves extracting information from unstructured or semi-structured, very complex data sets. A recent application at Tilburg University that is worth mentioning concerns extracting information from our soundscapes. So that's the sound around us. The soundscape around us contains information about environmental features, for example, animal sounds, that can be used to create models that support sustainable and healthy living communities. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Esther, it's your turn.
Thank you. So here at Tilburg University, I think one of the strong tenets of our research in AI is that we see AI not just as a powerful technology. It is not something that develops itself in splendid isolation. It is, and always will be, part of a socio-technical context. So if we want to understand technology, we have to understand the way in which it is part of that socio-technical context. In other words, the way in which data scientists think about the technology, their beliefs influence the way in which technology is developed. Technology, when it is part of our society, it enters a regulatory context. Already our legal frameworks, to a certain extent, touch upon AI developments. So here again, you see that the technology is not just a technology in itself, but is part of a broader, rich socio-technical context. But it's also the other way around. So our socio-technical context is also transformed, you could say, by AI developments, for the good and the bad. So we can see that there are a lot of exciting possibilities that AI provides us with. We already heard some of these examples mentioned by the previous speaker. Think about diagnosis, doing things more efficiently, etc., making society safer. So we have a lot of things that we can gain by developing AI. On the other hand, we also have to be open and noble about all the risks that are also involved when it comes to AI. Think about privacy intrusions, maybe solidarity being put under pressure. So if we want to reap the benefits of AI, we have to be aware of both the positive and the negative aspects of AI. And I think that we at Tilburg University are in a very good position to tackle and investigate these challenges. We are a university founded, built on humanistic values. So we have and interested in understanding society. So we are able, from our multidisciplinary perspective, to analyze how AI developments should be introduced in our society. So this is, I think, another important aspect of Tilburg University is our multidisciplinary approach. And I'm now going to focus on some of these disciplines, namely the ethical, societal, and legal aspects of AI. And our idea is that in order to understand and guide AI in our society in a responsible way, we have to work together. in order to build what's been framed human-centric AI. And human-centric AI is high on the policy agenda in Europe as well as it is in the Netherlands. And with human-centric AI, we mean that AI should always be in service of humanity, and it should help us to gain, to further common good, and to improve human welfare and freedom. So this should be our goal when we are developing AI. And we've seen that there are some aspects that we really need to take into account if we want to develop this human-centric AI. Our AI technologies and applications should be fair, they should be explainable, and they should be trustworthy. And these are, of course, very big, thick concepts, right? They're very nuanced, and you really can address them from different angles. And we strongly believe that if you want to really understand what it means to have explainable AI, it's not enough to just focus on the technical aspects. Yes, it's very complicated and challenging to kind of unravel what's in this black box, and this is necessary in order to develop explainable AI, but it's also necessary to understand what does it actually mean to have explainable AI? What is a good explanation? Therefore, you need sociologists, psychologists to help us understand what people actually need in order to understand AI. It is also important from an ethical point of view. And we believe in our democratic society that freedom, autonomy is one of the key aspects that we need in order to live a flourishing life. So what kind of explanations do we want from our technologies in order to have a meaningful form of autonomy? But also from a legal point of view, explainability is super important. How do you want to be a strong and capable supervisory body if you're not able to kind of understand what is happening within a technology, within a tech company, right? If you want to have auditable technology, you need to invest also from a legal point of view in making these AI systems explainable. So in this way, I hope I just give you a small teaser on how we in Tilburg University try from a multidisciplinary perspective to flesh out these key concepts such as trustworthiness, explainability, and fairness in order to build a society, a data-driven society that is grounded in fundamental rights and values that are key to our democratic society.
Thank you, Esther. Kenny, you can take the floor.
Thank you all. Thank you, Miriam. Dear colleagues, dear listeners, thank you for offering this opportunity for me to share with you some additional insights. And actually, I liked what the previous speakers have said, and to no surprise is what I'm about to tell you a natural step in that progression. We've talked about the technology, we've talked about the multidisciplinary aspects. And actually, Esther already mentioned that AI is more than the technology when it intersects with our society, when we use it. So I would just like to expand on that and offer to that one way that we can make these connections more is by looking at where and how these technologies are being used. Having the technology is not enough. Knowing what ethical legal aspects are important, but we need to understand the context in which we use them if we want to use these tools successfully. Sometimes AI is introduced to fields. Sometimes it just comes at us because higher up it's decided, it's a policy change. Sometimes we actively search out these opportunities, but we can only make that connection if we understand where are we going to use them. In other words, just being multidisciplinary within the university is not enough. We need to have this multidisciplinary approach with our stakeholders outside. So application domains that have been identified by the Dutch AI Coalition is a way, maybe not the only way, but a way to help us think about and engage with these stakeholders. So there are 13 domains, and many of which, as you can see on the slide, already link to areas that Tilburg University is exploring. Healthcare is mentioned, and there are several projects about this. Other areas are yet unexplored, and they offer opportunities, especially for a university as Tilburg University, where we aim to make these connections with society. So all in all, it is about making connections, not only within the university, but also outside the university. So how do we do that? Well, one way to start is by looking at how we identify the potential. As you can see on the slide, this is an exercise. By no means is this definitive or representative, but one way we looked at this within the community is by asking people, where are the areas that are relevant for Tilburg University? Where are the areas that present an opportunity for us? This is one way to identify where are we now, where do we want to go? We could repeat that exercise over and over again with different groups. So we can do that internally, we can do that externally. Once we identify such an opportunity, it's key that we bring this expertise together, the technical expertise, the ethical, legal, societal aspects, and the domain expertise. And examples of that are plenty in the university. I see colleagues from the Zero Hunger Lab, a place where a domain meets technology and multidisciplinary aspects. So we need to bring these things together in modalities that work. The Zero Hunger Lab, Transo, and this room is full of people that are exploring these modalities. Maybe we should do 8 weeks together at the university. I think I have some stuff to explain at home, but that's one way we can look at bringing people together, focus our energy, and map out what does AI mean for us. In short, Tilburg is in a good position. We have these connections with society. We have domain expertise. We have the ethical, the legal, societal aspects. We have the technological expertise. And as Emile showed you, this is not new. It is a continuation of our historical timeline. It even fits with the strategy that is being launched, 2027 strategy of Tilburg University. So AI has potential. There's no doubt about it. It has potential for good. It has the potential for worse. But the only way we can steer away from the worst and leverage the potential for good is if we know how they're going to be used in practice, whether that's in healthcare, in education, in my field of crisis management and humanitarian aid, or whatever it will be. But we need to make that connection if we want to get that knowledge and leverage it to potential. Thank you.
Thank you, Kenny. Could you please kindly stay a little bit here on stage, because currently we're coming at a very solemn moment in our event today, a very ceremonial moment as well. So please hold your cameras ready. May I ask indeed Esther and Marie to come to the floor? Maybe you can pass a little bit over here. And Professor Wim van der Donk, our rector and president, I kindly also invite to the floor. And may I now ask you, Esther, to hand over to Professor van der Donk the very first edition of our TAISIG position paper.
Here we go.
Go ahead. You can now take your seats, and Wim, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. I really thank you so much, all of you here, the whole team, TAISIG, Emile, others. When I first set my first step in this building, it was the 1st of May, 1986. This was in the portraits room, where I was earlier, having forgotten it was here today. I prepared that there was still a nice fireplace at that time. And we came together with some people from the law school, psychology students, to reflect on the meaning of informatics digitalization. And already then, Emile, it was very clear that it is rooted in the history of this university so much. Jan de Kwaai, you mentioned him, a predecessor in our former capacities as Commissioner of the Queen, was a professor at this university too, and he invested later on. He made one big mistake. He founded the Technological University in Eindhoven. Because there was perhaps a reason for that. I think we are good colleagues, so very fine, but he was very aware of the fact that technology was so much a shaper of modern societies that he perhaps didn't have the opportunity to do it here. But of course, we can combine endeavors together with our colleagues of Eindhoven. But there was one famous quote of him. I read a lot of his diaries and speeches, and he said, well, the people here have to have a very open-minded attitude towards new technologies. We should not be afraid of that. Open, but not uncritical. Because technology, as you made that point very clearly, is not just an unguilty blanco development. I was often surprised then at that meeting, 1st of May, '86, when we designed a research program on informatics and law and public administration at that time. We actually made a first book on expert systems. I remember very well, that's the first book I recently we found a floppy disk, 5-inch, in which the manuscript was there. And then already then it was clear that algorithmization, digitalization is such a fundamental change agent in all kinds of disciplines. That's exactly why we wrote down also in our new strategy that the digital Durkheim is here in Tilburg. This time, you know, statistics, registrations were the first, you know, clue to the development of social sciences as such. Now there is something in the air. We all feel that things are going to change because, again, a new wave of digital needs and opportunities are changing the mere way we educate and we do research. And we want to be on top of that. We want to be recognized internationally, nationally, regionally as a university where we have seen that spirit of Jan de Kwaai. Be open to new technologies, but not uncritical. And there's a very good reason to do so, because, you know, technology is not a mere tool. It's a false image. Technology is a set of goals, sometimes concealed. Technology has its own values. It's a kind of program. Of course, it's a tool too, it's perhaps both. And exactly that, Esther, and I was very, very happy to read that very clearly in the position paper of this university, that we recognize this technology as a kind of interaction of social, legal, ethical, technical, all kinds of interplaying dimensions that indeed demand a kind of interdisciplinary openness to that new technology. We cannot just do by studying the technology. We have to reflect on it, apply it. And that's what Professor Boudewijn Haverkort, the Dean of TAISIG, has very well developed as a mere master plan of digital sciences for society, in which we indeed want to organize basic knowledge for all of us, because we have to learn all our life, we too. But we have to be able to innovate with this technology in all kinds of fields, linguistics, psychology, economics. We have to use the technology to know it, but also to reflect on it. And exactly this reflection is very, very, very central also in position taking. We really take a position in the sense that we acknowledge the urgent need to ask difficult questions, also uneasy questions. I remember very well, I read once a book of Langdon Winner on the history of the refrigerator. And you see that even such a banal thing that we all use these days has a complex economic, historical, technical history. So we need to be open, interdisciplinary, to need all the colleagues from all the departments in order to participate in this endeavor. Because, and that's my final part, this is really also relating to values. Values were very important in our strategy. Connected care. We all know that curiosity is the first one. And then again, we see this technology is not, you know, just a blanco thing happening. The virtue of ignorance is sometimes needed to organize solidarity in a society, just because we didn't know everything, was having a kind of political agenda that not knowing things helped us to make wise decisions for the future of society. In a society where everything is opened up and extremely individualized, the algorithmization of the I might also very much be endangering one of the other cherished values we have, democracy and the idea to strive for a common good. And where algorithmization is helping us to extremely individualize patterns, it might very well be at odds with some other important values. That's not new too. Already the refrigerator was reflecting difficult value choices. And that's, my dear colleagues, is why I'm so happy to read the position paper. Because yes, new technologies. There is something in the air, we should be with it, we should be eager to study it in an open attitude, but not uncritical. Because we are a university, because we are Tilburg University. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Wim, for your reflection. I think it is a justified conclusion that Tilburg University indeed has a unique and indispensable contribution to make to the national and international artificial intelligence landscape. So let's all work together to pick up that challenge and that responsibility. Now, over to the next part of the program, please, Julia.
So now indeed we are moving to the second part of the program, which is a keynote by Professor Corien Prins. She's a professor of law and computerization here at Tilburg University. She's also a chairperson of the Netherlands Scientific Council for Government Policy. And actually at the end of last year, the council published an extensive report basically giving some guidelines about how to best embed AI into society. And so we are really honored to have Professor Prins walking us through that report and also sharing her insights. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for the introduction. I saw a bit of an outdated picture, but well, here I am, and thanks for being my audience today, and also thanks for the colleagues at home or any other place for being here online. Yes, I would like to share with you give you some insights of the report that we published as the Scientific Council for Government Policy in The Hague. Give you a bit of a background on what the Scientific Council is in Dutch. Waartoe zijn wij op aarde? What's our key purpose? But first, I'm an academic working at Tilburg University for quite some time. We are all academics working here at our university from different disciplines, all tackling the topic, the challenging topic of AI. But I would like to take you on a journey. Just set aside being an academic and travel with me to The Hague, or travel with me to any other capital, governmental capital of your home country, where policy is being made, where policymakers as well as politicians struggle with a development such as AI. So try to position yourself in The Hague, not being an academic for 15 minutes. At the final stages of my presentation, I'll come back to us being an academic. But what I would like to show you, tease you a little bit on, is the agenda in The Hague. What does it mean for us, academics? Of course, we have our research and we would like to stimulate and inspire many people, professionals, either in The Hague or in businesses with our research. But there's a different side to it as well. How do we relate to the agenda in The Hague? What does it mean for us, education-wise and research-wise? So that's a bit in the back of your mind when, well, 15 minutes of a journey, starting in what I feel is a beautiful building in The Hague, situated at the Buitenhof, which is opposite to Binnenhof, a very ancient and old building. That's where the Scientific Council for Government Policy is situated, with the most prominent advisory body of the government. We're independent, meaning that we're independent in agenda setting, as well as independent in what we propose and analyze in our reports. So this report on AI was on request by multiple ministries, but in the end, we could have said, as the Scientific Council, no way, we're not dealing with that topic. We have some other topics on our agenda. In that sense, we're independent. Or we could say, yes, you would like to, government, you would like to have a report on AI, but not from a perspective that we feel is important. So we're independent in agenda setting, independent in our advice, and the government, the cabinet has to react, and the reaction being discussed in Parliament. We deal with topics on the full spectrum of government policy, meaning that we address AI, but also the future of health, or climate change, migration, our financial system, the future of Europe, all topics that have been on the agenda or are still on the agenda of quite a small organization as the WRR is. Prominent in our topics is it is always directed at the long-term strategy of government and policy making. So it's not dealing with the topics of today. Of course, AI is a topic of today, but the choices that we make today have huge implications for the future. So our advice is always directed at this dot on the horizon. In turning the bolts right now, what does that mean for the future? And the challenges that we face in the future, what does it mean for policy and politics right now? Always crossing policy domains. Talking about interdisciplinary, talking about different domains in healthcare, agriculture, or societal security, social security. And core in our work is we translate science into policy, which is, I still find it at least quite difficult and quite a challenge. It is not writing down science in a few other words. Translating science into policy is understanding the challenges that policy faces. For example, and now I'm taking you on that journey to The Hague. When we talk about AI, and when we talk about policy making on AI in the Netherlands, what does it, for example, mean, given that we're a small country? We're a small country in a dominant, broader world where countries like the United States with the big tech or China have a crucial influence on what is happening, not only on a technical level, but also on ethics. So how do we make a difference as a small country? One question. Another question is, as I will show, we see AI as, Emile already referred to it, as a system technology, meaning a technology that has broad implications in our society in many different domains. When you think of the Netherlands and the economic structures of the Netherlands and how we make money in the Netherlands, one sector is crucial, agriculture. Another sector is crucial, logistics. So in looking at the Netherlands and the characteristics of the economic fundamentals of the Netherlands, we see a few areas and domains. What does that mean in an AI-based society? Would that mean that, as one of our recommendations in our report is, government, policymakers, think of AI and think of AI developments also along the line of the future for the Netherlands, economic-wise, the fundamentals of our country in making money. Let not be John Deere, the data grabber, ending all the data in another country, not in the Netherlands. So that as a quick starting point, I'm not going to explain all my sheets in detail. I have drafted my sheets also to be distributed afterwards. So it's not merely a guidance for my talk, but it's much more also information afterwards for you all. But quick here, it is quite a thick report, more than 500 pages, on the request of the Dutch government, signed by 9 ministers, which also already shows the broadness of the topic. Key question of the government to the Scientific Council is, what is the impact of AI on public values? Public values in its broadest sense, also economic related values. So what did we do? Because as I said, we are a very small organization. We cannot do everything. So why deal with a topic such as AI? And what is the added value of the Scientific Council in comparison to all the reports that are already on the table in either The Hague, or academic research of multiple countries, etc. And after reading a lot of that already available, highly relevant material, we said what we could add is try to take it one step higher, take one step back in looking at the technology as such. What type of technology are we dealing with? And what does that show us for policy? So, this is just a quick slide on what is AI. We haven't touched on that question today. Many different definitions. How we position ourselves is based on the definition used at the European level right now. But in that we try to take the broadness. Oh, sorry, I have to be in the picture. That you're still seeing me. Okay. So that's the definition we take. We argue in the report, and I cannot address that in much detail, that AI is a systems technology. Why? One reason, it is the type of technology that has an effect and impact on almost all domains in society. That's one. Two, it is a systems technology because of the systemic implications in society, in economy. Three, if you look at the technology, is the type of technology that shows us that it is not only the technology as such that makes the changes, but also the broader context of the technology. To make myself a bit more clear, combustion engine is one of the verbrandingsmotor in Dutch, is a system technology as well. But a combustion engine is being used in cars, automobiles. And in looking at the combustion engine applied in cars, we see that it is not only the technology as such that we have to address, that we have to innovate in, etc., but also the context. Without highways, we're nowhere with our car. Without signs, we're nowhere with our cars. So it requires us to think about the broader context, and it offers us potential also in technology innovation from that broader context. An AI example here, when you apply AI in agriculture, you need sensor technology to read the environment. So what are the optimal manners in reading the environment? That's a final reason, or at least it's a final reason that I mentioned here, why we feel that this is what we call a system technology. And what we did in the report is go back into history. Look at the different systems technology that we have seen over time, and what lessons can we draw from looking at the steam engine, from looking at electricity, looking at the combustion engine computers. Well, let me first do this one. That's easier. And in looking back at history, what we saw is that when you think from the position of being in The Hague, being a policymaker, being a politician, there are what we refer to as 5 tasks. 1, demystification. There are a lot of different stories about what AI can or cannot do, with high potential dark scenarios. But it is crucial to be realistic. So demystification and the role for government in demystification is one. 2, contextualization. I already referred to it's more than just the technology. It's the context in which we use the technology that is crucial and important there as well. And what choices do we make there? How do we steer there? How do we facilitate there as a government? 3, engagement. This is not just a matter of developers, scientists, companies, the government. This is a matter of society as a whole. Meaning that NGOs play a crucial role here in discussing, in debating, in putting on the agenda ethical values. Regulation. You all know that at this point in time, we discuss in Brussels an AI Act. And in The Hague, there's a lot of focus on the AI Act. But in looking at regulation, we do see that there is so much more than what is at present on the agenda. And positioning, we are a small country, the Netherlands. We cannot do this on our own. So we need to work together in an international arena, but from confidence, from a perspective on how we see ourselves here, how we value certain things. Cooperation, not blind, but cooperation from given a certain identity. So these are the 5 tasks that we distill and discuss in the report. What I will do is very briefly, given time, very briefly touch upon a few of the type of recommendations that we provide in the report on all 5 tasks. And as said, the slides are primarily for you as background material. Would you like to not read 500 pages, but do it on in a quick manner based on my slides? So demystification, key question there is, what are we talking about? What is the potential of the technology? What do we really need to be afraid of? But where are the success factors and what are the real chances? And in what order? So what we did, a key recommendation there is learning about AI, stimulating AI wisdom. And that may seem to be rather simple type of recommendation here in our academic environment, but this is not an easy case in The Hague. Learning. So that is one thing that I will return to later on in the final stages of my presentation. What does that mean for us academics? Because they have to learn based on knowledge. Where does that knowledge come from? Among others, from us. Contextualization, how does it work is the key question there. Well, how does it work given supporting technologies? Tom Wilthagen will follow up on my presentation talking about labor. And of course, AI has the potential to do a lot of things that thus far we human beings could do. But we believe and discuss in the report that it will primarily be an interaction between human and computers. And that implies something in understanding that interaction. The social ecosystem, the technical ecosystem. So we address that based on the question and given the question how to make it work. One of the recommendations there, and I already briefly referred to it, is we're a small country, the Netherlands. We cannot do everything. In a certain manner, the government has to facilitate AI development as well as AI implementation. And look at the automobile, the cars and the highways. We couldn't facilitate the building of the highways all over the Netherlands in one single go. No, we prioritized. So what are the priorities in thinking about the future position of the Netherlands? How to prioritize here? We cannot do everything. We had an excellent sheet on where the potential of Tilburg University is AI-wise and AI research-wise, is that the same list when you think of the future of the Netherlands? Or is it different? So choose an AI identity. Is it agriculture, logistics, healthcare, education? What are the priorities where the government at first instance facilitates? Because companies, universities cannot do it on their own. Well, improving and qualifying skills. Third task, who should be involved? I already referred to the NGOs. In being involved, you can take different positions. Fight, improve, agenda setting. What type of role would you like to play in being engaged? And what we, based also on numerous conversations in the field with policymakers, with professionals, the labor organization, what we felt is there is so much to gain in strengthening civil society. Of course, there are the bits of freedom of this world, but the labor organizations, FNV, CNV in the Netherlands, still have a long way to go if they want to take their position. Organizing feedback, crucial. Regulation is the fourth task. What kind of framework is necessary? And our key message there is, in looking back at history more broad, in looking outside here, we see trees, houses, a campus, a beautiful campus. In looking at how we structured the Netherlands, building-wise, living-wise, highways, etc. 30 years ago, we thought of as a big strategic plan on how to use the land and the available land in the Netherlands. Where to put what interest to put above other interests. What we argue is the AI Act, the Brussels AI Act, is merely one element of a much broader picture that you have to develop on what type of society do we aim for with AI. And given that AI is not merely a technical thing, a tool, as Donk said, but it structures society. And in the end, we have structured it and we cannot go back. So let's think about that future right now, also from a regulatory perspective. Final, so we recommend on a broader debate and countering certain worrying trends. Final one, how do we relate to others, being a small country globally? With two pillars here. One is national competitiveness, the Dutch position, economic position, given global developments, but also national security. We all know that AI is being used now in dark scenarios. So how do we defend ourselves in this new type of world, where the actors are not visible, no longer that visible as they were in the past? So we argue, we say from a, not only think nation-wise, but also network-wise. Who do you want to partner with on an international level? And that requires a certain new type of what we call AI diplomacy. A final recommendation, and then I wrap up, is I think several of you are familiar with how it works in The Hague, or how it works in your own country in the capital where policy is being made. It is often silos, with ministries dealing with their domain and not talking, put it a bit blunt, not talking with others. Whereas AI is a type of development that needs coordination, that needs knowledge sharing, that needs informing upfront. So a final recommendation is, government, please bring your act together in the sense that please bring your knowledge together, coordinate, and there's so much to gain there with, and that's our final recommendation, make it political. What we at least see in the Netherlands, it is digital technology in general and AI more specific, it is still very much a bureaucratic issue. Bureaucratic in not becoming a political issue. But the changes relate to society and how we think of our society and develop our society, and the nuts and the bolts that we implement is politics. So finally, my final sheet here. And that is merely something that I would like to give, I'm looking at Emile, I would like to give for the future in that as an academic, we returning being academic, what do these challenges that The Hague faces, or any other capital faces, or Brussels faces, what do these challenges mean for, first, our research agenda, and B, our education programs? And I find it a stimulating, curious question always to deal with the final topic here, what I call orphan subjects. In my field, we address in multiple publications privacy, personal data protection. But there are many what I call orphan subjects that we do not deal with. Why not? We always run after, and I put it a bit blunt, run after the same topic. Because it's easy to make the argument that this is relevant and highly potential, high academic potential, etc. But I would be challenged to explain why I do not opt for this or that topic. What is our argument there? And I can find numerous arguments, among others our expertise. But I feel that given the challenges on the agenda of others, we have to think of our contribution. That's what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Corien, for your compelling talk, which also contains, I guess, an important call to action for our entire university community, since it touches upon research, education, teaching, impact-related work. So there's a lot to discuss. We have two colleagues that have prepared a reflection to the talk that Corien just delivered. The first is Professor Ton Wilthagen. Ton, may I please ask you to come forward?
Yes, thanks for the invitation, and thanks, Corien, for giving this very substantial keynote, and good to see you back also at the university again. So, yes, I think my main point is that the debate about artificial intelligence is really a debate about ourselves. So it's about humankind. It's not about machines, it's about ourselves. And I will elaborate on that. But first, as we were discussing before we started this webinar, it's good to have a Dutch view on the issue, a Dutch substantive, elaborate view that I think we were still missing. So, of course, we have a lot of input now from European Union and other countries, but it's very welcome now to have this Dutch view. So, and yes, Emile referred to me saying something about computers that could think. Well, this is also very important because the history of Tilburg University also contains a very famous person, Max Euwe, the first and only world champion in chess. And actually now we are in the Wood First room, broadcasting from here, but next door is the Max Euwe room. It was too small probably to put us there. So, and this means when I'm saying that this debate is about us, I mean us as mankind, as humankind, and I mean also us as a society, but also us as a university that is specialized in social sciences and humanities. So I will come back on that. So first, and that of course triggered me, I think in the report that is here for discussion, it's right to say that this is about a general purpose technology. It's different from electricity or from combustion engines, because electricity you can turn on, you can turn off, and electricity cannot think or whatever it is. Max Euwe, when he was held his inaugural lecture here as a professor, his inaugural lecture was titled, "Can Computers Think?" Electricity cannot think. Combustion engines cannot think. We don't know whether computers can actually think. But that is the difference, of course. And the main thing is we talk about general purpose technology, then we really have to talk about the purpose of this. I think that is the main thing, the purpose and the view that we have on the nature of this technology. So I think in general, and that was already acknowledged by a scholar called Quensberg, and Quensberg, he formulated a few laws on robotics or artificial intelligence. And his first law reads, technology is neither good nor bad, nor is it neutral. I think that is very much at stake. Robots and artificial intelligence can contribute to, as Esther said, to the social good, to a good society, and also, which is my main field, making working life easier, safer, better, healthier, more productive. New jobs can appear. People can take up new jobs, fascinating jobs. This is already happening. I'm a member of the National Coalition on Technology and Inclusion, and we strive for the application, but also the development of technology that can help people with a weak position in the labor market to remain in work or to enter in work. Whereas without the technology, this is very hard. So we recently we granted €1 million in subsidies for pilots and experiments to develop, but especially apply inclusive technology. Technology that was designed by inclusion, inclusive design. So that is the positive side, of course, that we already see also in the world of labor. And of course, those benefits are also there in other domains. Like we could have a very democratic society now triggered by AI, because we might have real-time influence on decision-making, on politics, etc. So in general, this, as I like to phrase it, this technology can be a blessing in disguise. But there's also the other side. And the other side, at the same time, the technology might also turn out to be a devil in disguise. And that's, I think, of course, that is the dystopian kind of scenario, threatening not only privacy and other human rights, but also in the field of labor, driving people out of jobs without the possibility to return to the labor market, which means no work, no job, no income, and no sustainable position any longer. So the main effect that we see now is not so much people losing their jobs. Yes, this is happening. It's also people acquiring new jobs, general jobs that we didn't know that they existed 10 years ago. Those jobs were not there because when we didn't have anything like AI or applications or iPhones, there was no app developer job available because we didn't have the technology. So that is happening. But the main thing that is happening, so job destruction, job augmentation, better jobs, but the main thing that is happening, and that applies to all of us, is that our jobs change. So AI and robotics change our jobs, and that effect is more substantive than the destruction or the creation of jobs. And I will come back to that because that relates to one of the important recommendations in the report as well. Actually, this ambivalence of this new technology is not so different from old technology. A hammer can be used to build a house or to kill someone. But that, again, is up to us what we do with it. So, in my view, AI and also robots already have moral significance. And they decide in moral ways, even that today this is still predominantly determined by human agency. And therefore, the biggest issue is the issue of value alignment. Value alignment between humans and machines. And the biggest consequence of this all, as I already said, is that we are now urged to reflect on our own morality, on our own values. That's the main task at hand. As one of the authors, Havens, puts it, but how will machines know what we value if we don't know ourselves? Look at the situation now in Ukraine. We do not agree about values, apparently. So if we do not agree about values, we have a big problem aligning values with machines, because the machines will actually ask, you know, what is the purpose? And if we don't know what the purpose is, or we do not agree, then we can really go into the danger zone of this, the twilight zone of this technology. So we cannot just study technology, we have to engage in self-examination. And I think this is also one of the qualities that we have in Tilburg, also in the tradition of Max Euwen and the other scholars that Emile mentioned. Because, and the good news is that we just have been awarded a Jean Monnet Institute status to our European Value Studies initiative. And this is really what we have to do. We have to study values, but we also have to study where values come from, how values are being implemented, because having values, I mean, we have laid down values, many values in so many agreements and charters. We even lay down values in the Minsk agreements, but it's not longer valid. So the study of values, the study of the implementation of values, the study of why we fail to implement our own values so far as humankind, while we expect the machines to implement those values, that is, I think, is something that is at the core of our expertise in Tilburg, and is a very important contribution to be made. And the thing is, it's like, you know, all of a sudden aliens arrived on our planet and asked the existential question, who are you and what do you want? And can we answer this question, actually? So, therefore, the rise of AI and robots is to a great degree a kind of a man in the mirror situation. So, robots and AI ask the questions that was posed in a track, the song by the 1960s New York rock band The Velvet Underground with Lou Reed as a singer. This song is called I'll Be Your Mirror, if that's what you want. And that's the main thing, you know, what do we want? What do we want to do with the technology, and how can we use it or misuse it? So the main thing is, of course, we don't have a lifetime to raise AI like we raise our children. So we don't have the time to that, because it's already there, and it's not an education, it's not educating AI, it's different than in the case of human children. So let's then also look at at least one important recommendation in the report. And that recommendation, it's actually two that touch upon the same issue. That recommendation is to strengthen the skills and the critical views of individuals that work with AI systems, and also develop a system of training and education. I think that is key. The main thing is, if you look at the Dutch situation, we have a polarized labor market, a bifurcated labor market, and many people don't have access to training and education because they are in atypical employment. So if we really want to educate people and make sure that people anticipate the developments, are able to anticipate, we have to really change our training systems. Make them accessible for everyone, not just for the highly educated people that will find their way anyway. But this is one of the flaws in our system. And this we really have to change now. And also, education costs money. Yes, someone has to pay for it. In the Scandinavian countries, the government pays for education for primary, secondary, university. But here it's different. So I think we have quite a task to help people cope and work with AI and robotics. And I think this is not really, it's not really going on yet. So much effort has to be undertaken, because we have to change the education system, change the education, the labor market system, in order to actually accommodate those developments that can still, and I think quite optimistic, that we can steer developments in the right direction if we can steer ourselves in the right direction. So the same kind of recommendation is also included in the report, and then it's called Strengthen AI Wisdom. And I think that, well, yes, that is what we should do, but not only for the people that work with AI, especially for the people that don't work yet with AI, because one day will come that in their job or in their education, AI will knock on the door. So if you're not ready to work with it, then you will not really be able to benefit from those developments. And well, also to conclude this in this short intervention, I think we have to start early. So it's not like people at working age or people that are in universities or higher education. So we have to start with the children because it's their future. And therefore I decided to write a children book. And that book, this is a dummy because it's now in print. And what we are going to do, and you will find the link in the chat, we just announced we have it's in the chat.
Yes.
Thanks for that. It was very last minute because it was just announced that on April 13, at the occasion of this book being published, the book is about a girl of 11 years old, and she is really mad about everything that's going wrong in the world, the climate change and anything. So she puts her hopes up for AI and robotics and tries to live like a robot, because she'll think that robots will, in the end, make the world a better place than humans could do so far. So what we decided to do on April 13, and you will find the link is, so if you have any children or nieces or nephews in the age 9 to 14 approximately, you can invite them because we just published the invitation, and that will be a special event of our Tilburg University Junior Kinderuniversiteit. And we will have colleagues like we have here that will make contributions on the theme, can we actually be friends with AI and robotics? Can they help us learn another language? That's something that we also study here. But also, can you share secrets with chatbots? Is that a better way than maybe share the secrets or not wanting to share the secrets with people, with humans? And we will also then, of course, present the books. And we will also have a special robotic dance show, which includes popping and locking movements with children. So why do we do this? Because this is not a study book, but it's hopefully, I'm not the judge of that, an exciting book, you know, and it's a funny book. But you will all find the themes that we discuss in here. The Turing test is one of the things. So children that read the book will know about Turing test at that early age. I think that's what we do. We are an institution for education. We should educate the students. We should not forget the children, and we should really, really engage in self-examination. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Tom, for your contribution. Indeed, AI is not the first technology that humankind developed, but indeed, essentially, it poses unprecedented challenges to us that we must learn to deal with. And it's also very nice to learn that we have so much versatility in our community, since you now let us know that you are also the author of a true children novel. So very much looking forward to the launch of that book. Now, quickly moving on with the show, may I kindly ask Professor Emile Aarts to come forward and deliver your reflection.
Thank you very much, Miriam. So, Tom, congratulations with your children's book. As they say, there is a child in every adult. So we are also looking forward to get a copy from you. So maybe to reflect a little on the great report, 512 pages. That's 2 to the power 9 for the scientists in this one, but it has no meaning. I would like to start my short reflection with a statement from Edgar Dijkstra. He is the only Dutch Turing Prize Award winner, which is a great achievement. And he, at some point in time, when he was dwelling on computers, he stated, computers cannot think in the same way as submarines cannot swim. And that's a great remark, because he levels between the fact of, let's say, one one, let's say, functionality within the human body and embodied in our body as such. And then all the other things that are relevant to that because of our existence. So that's a great saying. But if you look at movies like Matrix, Transcendence, or Passengers, you see that we have reached a point in our development that lies beyond this simple position, and that we are close to God in the sense, as Yuval Harari states, that we can build artifacts that promise a better life and even may prepare mankind to leave this earth and become part of a journey in the outer space. Luckily, not this decade, but it is a way of thinking that pulls the entire thoughts into this domain, and that is the most important element, in my view, of your report, Corien, is that you consider it as a systems technology. So not just another thing like the Internet of Things or open source software or mobile computer or 5G. It extends way beyond that. And the comparisons that you make with the other four is really very important, because for all the other four, you can identify, and you do that also in the report, why they actually changed the way we live on Earth, and we did it for the better in terms of prosperity and welfare. And that's a very important start. So congratulations with your report, as if it were only for that perspective. So it really puts the attention where it should be. And what is the conclusion from that? Is that we shouldn't dwell on all the other elements that we call, let's say, elements from the digital science or let's say things in the fringes. Let's simply call it artificial intelligence and work on it, because the field is large enough and the quest to substantiate is big enough. So in my reflection, I would like to take the position of the Dutch AI Coalition, because we have been there for 2 years now, and we are working on a number of elements that let's say, your report touches upon. Or maybe we consider ourselves as rather instrumental to, let's say, make the report work on those parts that we at least can contribute to. So let me first start with this element of your 5 tasks, and the first one is the demystification. So what it says is tackling overly optimistic and pessimistic images of artificial intelligence. And that brings me back to the history, because in the 70 years that we have artificial intelligence, we exactly have been doing that. There were summers and there were winters. There were optimistic and there were pessimistic parts. There were parts where we had this utopic view, and there were parts that we had in which we had this dystopic view. And what we always did is we closed the summer with a winter. And the winter meant that we stopped funding the enterprises, stopped funding all the research, until some diehards showed again that the promise was big and that we should go beyond that. So that is an important thing. So do away with the summers and the winters, pull it away from the dialectic developments, and turn it into a spring forever. That would be a nice view, in my opinion. But the second thing is about contextualization. So what you state simply in your report is make it work in practice. And that's a lovely statement. But it is, on the one hand side, very simple, and on the other hand, extremely difficult to realize. It's like mathematical theory. So you write it in one line and you take a man's life to prove it. But that is what we scientists find interesting and challenging. And so the question then is there a kind of instrument where we could indeed make it work, creating and enabling socio-economical ecosystems, as you call for? And from our perspective, the ELSA lab environment is exactly focusing at that point. So we would like to, let's say, amplify this development, because there was another part that you told us that would be important and interesting, and maybe even novel, that is the involvement of the departments, so the governmental departments. And what we can luckily state is that from the elder development, departments like justice, defense, internal affairs, agriculture, they are all enthusiastic about it. So they embrace it. So rather than, let's say, having the private sector pulling off the research agenda, we now are in a, let's say, venue where the public sector is driving the research agenda to a large extent. And that's novel in the Netherlands. We never ever witnessed that before. So let's make it work. The engagement you touched upon, well, that's a big issue. But our recommendation would be indeed make the quadruple helix work. So we have in the Netherlands a lot of experience in making the triple helix work. So the innovation system or model that combines inputs from the public, the private, and the sectors and the knowledge institute. So the fourth dimension is the dimension of the citizen. And that's again a very simple statement. There are 70 million persons to which this applies. But the basic problem is, how do we reach them? Oh, is that the answer? We make a small movie, a Postbus 58, mededeling we call it, and we broadcast that. But that is not the issue. What is interesting and what is at stake is what is the, let's say, the influence, what is the opinion of the 16 or 17 million in the back channel? And that's the difficult part. So how do we collect the opinion of 17 million Dutch citizens? I wouldn't know. So if any one of you knows, please give me a call. We are happy to accommodate. Then we get to the regulation. Well, I can be short on that part. We have this European framework. There is the act that's under development. And the truly interesting thing about the act is that there is a class, they call it class A, of forbidden applications. And then there are 3 classes of applications that we can pursue. And the top of these 3 is the ones with let's say, the most danger and the largest threat. But the question then, and that's where the lawyers come in, where is the distinction between the two? What do we call forbidden and what do we call high level? And 50% of the lawyers in the Netherlands are now trying to make this space as large as possible, and the other 50% is trying to make it as closed as possible. So it will take 5 years at least of debate in the domain of lawyers to proceed. But we don't have the time for that. So we should find a way to speed this up. And then finally, the positioning, the international leadership. We are a small country, but we are also flat, not in the sense that the country is flat, but in the way we organize ourselves. So the channels are short, as we call it. So we can all call up the Prime Minister and he even answers the phone, which is a great thing in a small country like the Netherlands. So what we could do is take this, let's say, intellectual leadership position, as we have done in the past at previous occasions. There are general frameworks worldwide. So we have CLAIR in Europe, we have GPI at the global level, but what is really interesting is CIFAR. You mentioned in your report, Corien, that in 2017, the Canadian government was the first to have a full-fledged artificial intelligence strategic agenda. But that was not because the Canadian government is so bright. That is because they had in Canada for 40 years already an intellectual community they call CIFAR, and you have to pronounce that as CIFAR, where people have been discussing and debating all these elements of the near future in terms of largely in terms of artificial intelligence. So my tactics would be connect to the Canadians, learn from them what it means, and then try to, let's say, expand on these elements within Europe. And I'm sure that the French would like this for whatever reason. So that brings me to the end. I think that that really interesting and compelling things are going on. And the only mistake that we can make is to go too slowly. So let's speed up. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Emile, for your contribution. Indeed, I guess we cannot underestimate the pace, and we hardly can go too fast in this area. Now, it is 3:35, so we quickly continue with our program since we still have a very important part to handle, which is the part on education. Henry Brighton, Dr. Henry Brighton, a colleague in the Department of Cognitive Science and Artificial Intelligence, is already here to illuminate us on a very interesting and very exciting idea of a school encompassing AI elective minor for all of our bachelor students. Now, I have a note for the audience that is with us here physically in the room, since this is a duo presentation where Henry is going to tell us about these plans together with our colleague, Dr. Emile Keulers. Emmanuel could not be here due to circumstances, so he is in the call, he is in Zoom, but he cannot be here physically. So I guess for us here in the room, we're going to listen to Emmanuel rather than watch him. Whereas the people in Zoom, they can all both see him and hear him. Those are the perks of being online, I guess. So Emmanuel, let me know, would you go first? Oh, Henry, sorry.
Yes.
Would you go first and then we'll invite Emmanuel later?
Yeah, we'll see.
Okay, you just take it away and we'll see how it
Okay,
goes.
so
Go ahead.
Good afternoon, everybody. So yeah, my name's Henry Brighton. So I'm the academic director of the master's program in Cognitive Science and AI. Emmanuel is the director of the bachelor's program in Cognitive Science and AI. What we're here today to do is to introduce or announce a new minor, a university-wide AI minor. So that's what I'm going to do today. In particular, I'm going to focus on 3 questions. What is the minor? Why are we introducing it? And how are we going to implement this introduction? Okay. And I just, before I get into the details here, I just want to be clear that I'm part of a team. So one other member is, who initiated this and brought this minor to fruition. So the team is Marie, Emmanuel, and I. So this is a team effort. So I should mention that. Begin. So let me begin by addressing the question of what is the minor in AI. Well, it's a new minor, so it's starting in fall 2022. It's a university-wide. So the big point is 24 ECTs, and it's geared towards technically minded Tilburg University students. Okay. So I say technically minded because there are some kind of hoops you have to jump through in order to be eligible for this minor, and I'll get to that in the details of that in a short while. Next question, well, why are we introducing this minor? Okay, so I think the previous speakers articulated very clearly why this is a good idea. So first of all, I think we want to provide all Tilburg University students the opportunity to make AI part of their education. We can see why that's a really important objective. Okay, that's one reason why we're introducing this minor. Another reason we're introducing this minor is that it provides a pathway for students from other schools to enter our master's program, our technical master's program in cognitive science. So, and I think it's fair to say that many students, maybe they start off studying one subject, and at the master's level, they want to convert to another subject rather than continue. That's certainly the more international model. What we want to do is we want to provide, an economics student at Tilburg with the ability to take their bachelor's in economics and then do a kind of economics informed master in AI in cognitive science. Okay, so that's why we're introducing this point. There are 2 reasons. Just generally speaking, it's a good idea, but also it feeds into this educational master's level technical education. So how will we make this minor in AI a success? That's the next question. Well, there's already wheels in motion, so our technical study advisors are talking to other study advisors in other schools, and I think this is it. As part of the university strategic plan, there are hopefully lots of new minors being introduced. Now, exactly how that's done is a problem that needs to be overcome. And I think what we're doing is we're just taking the first few steps, informing people, and let's see where it takes us. That's the approach we're taking at the moment. And as will become apparent in the next slide, so another part of the implementation is that if a student's interested in doing this minor, there are some prerequisites, because many of the courses that we're taking are technical courses. So you need to jump through some hoops in order to take these courses. Yeah, can we go back? Sorry. Yeah, so I want to make clear that that we will provide a kind of consultation with anyone who wants to do this, to take this minor, about what experience they need. And I'll talk about that in the next slide. So let's just get into the nitty-gritties then. What's this minor all about? What would one study if one did this minor? So there are 4 courses in the general AI minor. Okay, so it says Introduction to AI 1, Data Structures and Algorithms, Elements of Machine Learning, and Introduction to Cognitive Science. So Introduction to AI 1 touches upon some of the stuff that Emile was talking about earlier, so the history of AI, some of the big results in AI, some of the problems with AI, etc., some algorithms as well. Data structures and algorithms, it looks at the essentials of algorithms, how you analyze algorithms, what their properties are, what kind of data structures you need to know about in order to solve certain problems. The third course, Elements in Machine Learning, is different to the others. So this is a course we're introducing specifically for people who take this minor. And what this does is it takes people with some degree of statistical background, and it pushes that statistics further in the direction of machine learning. And then you study machine learning as well. So it takes people with like a general statistics background, gets them up to speed with the basics of machine learning. So that's, as I say, that's a new course specific to this minor, and only for people studying this minor. And then the fourth course is Introduction to Cognitive Science, which is one of our core bachelor courses. So at this point, I should make clear that depending on which school a student is in, who wants to take this minor, the actual minor, the details may change. So for example, if you're a psychology student, we get lots of inquiries from psychology students about doing, for example, a master in science. Then you don't need to do the Introduction to Cognitive Science, right? So you can do a reduced minor of just 18 ECTS. Okay? So but that won't be the case if you studied, for example, I don't know, finance. You still need to take this fourth course in Introduction to Cognitive Science. And more generally, for all students entering this program, you need some technical knowledge is required, because the courses that you'll be studying, other than the third course, will have some technical prerequisites. Okay, so what we'll ask, and this is why we provide a kind of consultation service, is that you need some programming experience, and if you're a student wanting to study this money, you need some programming experience. You can point them in the direction of certain kind of data camp courses or skill tracks you can take in order to gain that experience. So that's more of a self-study route. But you also need some statistics background. And whether or not your current statistics background is sufficient or not will depend on which study program you're coming from. So this is a university-wide minor, but there are some hoops a student will have to jump through in order to take these courses. Now, to what degree that will be the case in the future, that's another story. This is the first kind of attempt at kind of expanding the reach of AI throughout the school. Okay, that's really all I want to say. I don't know if Emile wants to add anything.
No, I think everything's clear, Henry.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Henry and Emmanuel. I guess indeed this is only like a natural answer to the contributions that we've been hearing from the other speakers and all developments going on. in the world of AI, and a very Tilburg University way of going about things and organizing it and getting it ready already for the coming September start of the new academic year. So that's already very soon. Thanks so much, Henry and Emmanuel, once more. And I'm very curious to hear some replies, starting with you, Julia. You are a PhD student, very important community in our Tilburg University academic community as such. How do you feel about this minor?
So I guess in the interest of time, just a very brief comment. This indeed sounds like a very nice opportunity for students who want to become computationally savvy to do that. And it's, yeah, you can't deny that being that in today's society is very important. But I guess probably the strength is also that one would learn to think critically and basically not just to have those technical skills, but actually think what are the problems that I can apply them if I have the knowledge of deep learning. So is every problem amenable to that? No, we have to actually figure out what problems it's amenable to and what other problems it's not amenable to. And I think, I hope that this minor will teach students that, which is also a very important skill that you learn at university. Yeah, I hope that you will get many interested students in doing this.
Then I guess it is my honor to start wrapping up this event. We are also nearing 4 o'clock, so we're coming towards the end of this afternoon. Very big thank you once more to all of the speakers and the presenters this afternoon. It's been very inspiring, very challenging. I guess there is room for loads of discussion, loads of events to organize in the future. I am very pleased and honored that we all together, not only the speakers, but of course also you, the audience physically here, the audience online, all of us together, we are the TAISIG community of our university, and we are very much alive and very much kicking, and I'm very proud to be a part of that. As already said, you're very, very welcome to stay around a bit and have drinks with us and have some further discussion in this room. For those of you who are interested, there is a physical copy of the TAISIG position paper for you to take away home. Also tell your colleagues, because we have plenty of copies available for who is interested. We will of course keep you updated on any further TAISIG events that will be organized in the future. Do also please kindly extend the invitation to colleagues that you think might be interested in what we are doing. And they can, of course, also join our club. Thank you for now and see you soon.